and thank you for tuning in again. Today's topic is going to be a little discussion on a habit called spiritual bypassing. Now, it sounds like a really technical term, but I'm going to explain it a little bit further and how that's relevant to the current time. There's so much going on. We're in a COVID crisis globally, depending on where you are. It could be, better or worse. Here in the US, things are not going well, as I'm sure you may already know. But the important thing to do is to stay positive, take health in your hands, and stay high vibe when and where you can. But that statement can be a loaded one, and that's what I want to talk about today. It's very easy to understand when you're using spiritual bypassing, or the act of trying to push away any and all negativity and preserve your high vibration. It's pretty easy to ascertain if that's in your best interest and the best interest of others, or if that's a coping mechanism you're using to avoid healing or confronting something. So there's a real trend. It's everywhere. You see it on keychains, t-shirts, in people's Instagram bios, good vibes only, or hashtag good vibes only, which is a nice thought that we can really only marinate in the best of vibes, but it's really not realistic, and it's not the truth of the human experience on this plane and on this planet. So we need to learn to balance the light with the dark. We need to learn how to be comfortable with our own shadow and the shadow circumstances of what's around us. And really and truly, if we think about it, and if we are aware of what happens vibrationally around our existence, we know that the shadow around us, what shows up in our environment, is just a reflection of what's within us. And the true pursuit is to be in balance, right? You have to take the good with the bad, let the bad grow you. You can't ever stay stagnant. And oftentimes we think that our true goal, and please don't get me wrong on this, we often think our true goal is to be as high vibration as possible, because that means that we're going to attract all the good vibes, only positivity, only positive vibes. And I very literally wrote the book on this. Inner Glow Up is all about raising your vibration. It is the Raise Your Vibration manual in a lot of ways. And I even call it that. Sometimes I call it like the High Vibe Handbook. I call it a lot of different things to indicate to people what exactly is an inner glow up. But that was never my intention in writing it, and I really hope that that's not misconstrued by people who may be interested in reading it. There's no human experience where you're going to raise your vibration so high that you only attract positive circumstances. This life is about growing and changing. If we don't have interface with what we would consider bad vibes or difficult circumstances, how can we grow? How can we change? How can we plant light in new places, right? Because darkness is really just where the light enters, if you want to look at it. And additionally, I want to point out the notion that going through challenging circumstances, having tough conversations with people, seeing other people's wounds and helping them work through it as a mirror of what's going on within them, or as an example of health and balance, that's not bad vibes. That's just life. That's just our existence. That's the human experience. I think we too often get in a pattern of putting things in almost a pro-con, debit or credit column, where we say, I don't like this. This makes me uncomfortable. This is giving me a headache. This is bothering my good mood. This is a bad vibe. I want to distance myself from it. And that's fine and well when it comes down to needing to set boundaries with people and saying that they're being toxic without relent, without wanting to change. It's perfectly fine at that juncture to say, hey, this is a bad vibration that's trying to drag me down. This is someone who is lobbing their envy, jealousy, self-hate. They're projecting and throwing that at me because they see that either you're healthy and healed and don't have that self-hatred, or they simply just don't want to see, they can't find a positive stance or a positive place, so they don't want anyone to. That's another common thing people do. That's perfectly fine to set up a boundary and a border and say, I want to cultivate a higher vibration. I don't need this, right? Because there's nothing ventured, there's nothing gained, there's nothing that's going to be ventured or gained by either party, because the person or circumstance you're dealing with is just a stuck situation, right? There's no movement, there's no upward lift. So you really do have to draw that boundary and say that you want to protect and preserve your vibration. Additionally, if you're getting fatigued, if you feel yourself slipping because of the news cycle, consuming negative things, maybe eating lower vibrational foods to comfort yourself, that's a clear time when you can say, I need a break. This is too low vibe. I want to cultivate a higher vibration so that I can be immune to some of this darkness and some of this drag downward. That's also perfectly healthy. We all need to know our limits. We all need to know when to draw a boundary. That's very healthy, and one of the lessons we learn on this planet, on this plane. When it becomes unhealthy, and when it becomes cowardly, and when you use cultivating a high vibration as a tool to limit yourself, that's when it crosses and becomes unhealthy. There's so much in this world that is about shades of gray and nuance, and I can't stress that enough, but the best way to know what you're doing, if it's really in your best interest and if it's healing and lifting you up in the long term, even if it's making you feel uncomfortable or making you feel lower vibration emotions in the short term, that's ultimately liberating you. So it's positive in the long term. The way to know is, are you doing something out of a quest for truth, for unity, and to walk towards a more loving place with yourself and therefore with others as well? Or are you scared? Are you trying to withdraw inward? Are you trying to protect your space? Do you feel under threat? If you are using the notion good vibes only, or I want to stay high vibe, as a means to create a fence around yourself so that you don't have to feel, that's spiritual bypassing, and that's numbing yourself. A lot of people can use their spirituality or use their standards, things that are healthy, things that are part of being a fully integrated soul on this plane. They can use those like a crutch if they want to, which is very unhealthy and very limiting. So next time you're faced with a circumstance, be it a conversation about the COVID crisis and the pandemic, when you're faced with a discussion about oppressive systems or oppressive people, when you start having discussions with people that make you uncomfortable about the state and the crisis with our environment, if you're trying to cultivate a higher vibration in order to see it from a higher perspective, in order to take some time to be more informed about how you really feel about the situation, if you want to set boundaries about the discussion and revisit at a later date, that's healthy. That's not spiritual bypassing. When you want to use the expression, I just want to stay positive, I don't want to hear about anything negative, to silence others or stop the truth from reaching your ears or to numb yourself out, that's when it's a coping mechanism and a crutch. That's when it's unhealthy, and that's when it's just another tool in the toolbox of someone who's fundamentally without a backbone and who is being cowardly. Of course, we live in a world where we can co-create the universe around us, what we want to experience in this life, what we want to have around us to make this life easier, and what we want to enjoy. But we also can get a little bit hasty with that and try to cultivate a false sense of truth, a lie, honestly, a mistruth. And when we shut out and block receiving the truth, when we want to stay in a state of being numb to a situation, that's an escapist tendency and is never healthy. So really the way to reach balance, and like I always say, balance is the true key to being at peace and having inner peace in any situation, in any circumstance. The best thing to do is to take a balanced approach. You can in the long term and in the long run, cultivate more positivity, more joy, and more light by hearing tough truths, learning from other people's experiences, examining within to see if you have any dark traits, any oppressive traits, any traits that match a template that's about hierarchy, inequality, and divisiveness. If you see that within yourself, find ways to heal it, to let go of it through any number of methods that are healthy. I won't touch on those in the bounds of this podcast because really we're just talking about the spiritual bypassing of the whole good vibes only, I don't want to hear anything negative sort of posturing. So that's the best thing you can do. When you get overwhelmed by the flow of information, when you become overwhelmed, which it happens to me all the time too, as an empath, I can easily get overwhelmed when I am full to the brim with the negativity and the toxic nature of the world around us, right? And it's not that I'm finding a common place with that toxicity and negativity in me and I'm getting overwhelmed. It's a matter of witnessing it and not agreeing with it, witnessing it and not being in a vibrational alignment with it. That can be very taxing to me and to anyone, but especially to empaths. So in that time, I like to say, I've taken time to get informed. I've looked within about myself. I've had some tough discussions to get some of these shadow aspects of myself integrated into self so that it can be a place of light, right? Hearing someone's experience and understanding more about them and connecting on a soul frequency to have compassion, that's Christ consciousness. That is a very healthy thing. It may be painful in the moment, like I said, but that's immediately going to make you feel and make the other person feel connection. Connection and unity is why we are here. Indulge in that even if it's hard. Sit with that even when it's painful and even when it's not what you want to hear or what you want to be talking about, or if lunch is getting too heavy. This is too heavy of a discussion for your final jaunt out to a restaurant. Well, too bad. Too bad. This is showing up in your world for you for a reason. And a lot of difficulty, a lot of tough self-conversation actually liberates us to then be more light, more happy, and have better opportunities for joy and inner peace. So sit with that. Whenever all of that becomes too much, you always need to dial it back and restore. There's nothing wrong with saying, I need to take time to mindfully work on my vibration so I can vibrate higher and be a container for more light and be more receptive to the truth and to feel that resonance with the truth when I hear it, right? Taking time to restore and to take time for self-care on a deeper spiritual level beyond, just face masks and TV binging and all of that. Taking time for self-care on a deep, spiritual, soulful level and connecting, pulling it all inward to self to sit with the truths and integrate them, that's ultimately going to help restore you and push your vibration higher so you can continue to be of service to the truth. Which honestly, there's nothing more unifying and connecting than the truth. So I wish you well as you navigate all these tough topics. I hope that you can use some of the tools that I've been teaching you to raise your vibration, and you can connect with me as well on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook if you want to have a bit more of a discussion on anything I've talked about here. Thank you.